Before we begin, I'd like to request that we recite a Fatiha for the soul of Nathan Phillip and Wali Abdul Hasid. Well, to remember them and their souls, and Allah elevate them in the afterlife. It's just like Fatiha after soul. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد والثناء لرب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبو القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. السلام عليكم جميعا. أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله ونرجى أمركم. أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام, he gives us a really critical and important reminder. He reminds us he recommends us and reminds us and enjoins us to taqwa, to being God-wary, and to being organized in our affairs. Now, one of the important things about taqwa is understanding what it means and what it encompasses. There's a time when we say that we're talking about taqwa and there's an aspect of knowing what is right and wrong, what is the halal and the haram, recognizing those things, staying away from the things that are haram obviously, and doing the things that are permissible for us. Taqwa is often a lot of times translated into being God-fearing. And as we talked about in Salatul Jummah yesterday, that is one aspect of taqwa. That in fact the person who is a mu'min or believer has to be between the states of being too much to one side or the other, to too extreme. Khayrul umur, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, the best path is the middle ground. He's not so fearful of Allah only that he lives only in this state of fear. He doesn't go to the other extreme where he is so hopeful that he does things because, I have so much hope and I don't need to worry. That there's not accountability anymore. He's between the state, bayn al-khawf wa raja. He's between the state of having hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and having fear of the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This enables him to being in this state is what enables him to really ultimately become as much like the perfect example that we have in the Ma'asumeen of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali and Abi Talib. When we talk about Imam Ali alayhi salam, we have so much to say about valor and being a champion. So much that we can say about how great he was. If we want to begin the fadail and the greatness of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, then we'll be here till tomorrow. For certain. There is much to say. One of the most beautiful things about Imam Ali alayhi salam is that he was such a person that even today, despite any of the disputes that exist amongst Muslims, not Islam, not the truth, but amongst Muslims and different sects of Islam, nobody has anything bad to say about Ali ibn Abi. No one has any disputes there. About the greatness of Amir al-Mu'mineen, no one has anything bad to say. So in reality, what Imam Ali alayhi salam should and can serve to be And this is especially important to the followers and lovers of the Ahlul Bayt. Because Imam Ali has a special place amongst the followers of the Ahlul Bayt. And so what that means is that if he can serve as the connecting point, as an access to all of these different madhahib, then we should be at the forefront of that. This is what it means. It means we have the ability through the teachings, through the akhlaq, through the karamat of what we see in Imam Ali alayhi salam, by following that to be able to do what? To set the tone and example. So here's two different approaches. So there's a time when a community, for example, is marginalized. It's not getting their due rights. It's not having access to the things that they should as a community. So one approach, we can look at, for example, I'll use the example of the Jewish community in America, because you're all familiar with it. You're all familiar with their presence, their establishments, and so on and so forth. There's a time when maybe such a community feels that we don't have the things that we need, so then therefore, we will go and we will establish the things that we need. Now, there's a time when this establishment of the things that are needed, or the voids that maybe they see in our community, we don't have this or we don't have that, and they go about and they establish these things for themselves, whether it's schools or hospitals or jobs or employment or a support system and infrastructure and so on and so forth. So this void that existed, it was created, but it was created only in a very narrow scope. This is where there's a major difference with Islam. A major difference with the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt. Because the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, what did they do? There were voids in society. There were problems in society. And they came to rectify these, but in such a way that, guess what? It became the solution not for Muslims, but for all of humanity. So now here comes the Prophet of Allah, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's not he's bringing the message just for a group of people. This is the message that is the salvation for humankind. Now we have to understand, one of the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that He's adil, that He's just, and even higher than justice is mercy. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We begin almost every surah with these words of reminder to ourselves of the level of God's mercy. So someone who is just and merciful, could He create or send a final prophet with a final religion that's not going to suffice? It's not going to suffice. No, it has to suffice. It will be outside of Allah's adala and justice for Him to say that this is your last prophet and the last religion, and some of you eventually will make it, some of you won't. No. This is the reason why it says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. And the Messenger of Allah is the perfect exemplar, the perfect example for you to follow. So this means that this is not the example just for the people who are living in Hijaz or the people who are living in the area. This means this is the example for all of humanity. Why is this so important? The reason why this is so critical to understand is because when we're talking about someone like Amir al-Mu'mineen, who can be an example and connector for all of the madahib, the Messenger of Allah and the religion of Islam is a connector for all of humanity. Okay. The more that Muslims get away from Islam and Muslim values, the more distant we get away from our solution. So then we find ourselves in situations where we're like, well, why isn't this working? Why isn't my life right? Why isn't there this solution? Guaranteed, it often has something to do with our value system. And getting missing from that value system. And one of the ulama was giving the example of the Imam Jawad alayhi salam. How it was a time where Imam Jawad alayhi salam, also his birthday recently passed, but it was a time for the Muslims and the Shias that it was a little bit difficult for them. So, for all of this time, Imam Rida alayhi salam has his own difficulties to deal with. Ultimately, the people are concerned about who will be the next Imam after Imam Rida. And Imam Rida is telling them, don't worry. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His promise is real. His promise, the promise of God is not like the promise of you and I. You know, when we say we'll do something, if we add an inshallah to it, it usually means it might not actually happen. As opposed to, inshallah, it's more and more likely to happen. And one brother said, don't say inshallah. Because it has a negative connotation now. And so Allah's promise is real. Allah's promise is real. And that He's telling the people, don't worry, Allah's promise is real, then Allah will provide. We'll have an Imam after me. Don't worry. Now, when we say going back to our sources, going back to our true values, this is one of the things that's most important in today's day and age. Someone said to Ayatollah Khomeini, Imam Khomeini, that during this time when he wants to create this revolution in Iran, and this is what the people wanted, and were also the will of the people, but when he wanted to help to support this or to be a part of this incredible revolution and change, someone said to him that, you're going to send us back hundreds of years if you do this. We spent all this time establishing relationships with the West. We have good relationships. Those are our homeboys. They like us. We're all good. And now you're going to go mess all of this up. You're going to send us back hundreds of years. He said, I'd like to take us back 1,400 years. Just to be exact. Because our value system has strayed significantly from that time. Meaning from the roots of Islam, our value system has strayed. I'd like to go back to our true value system. And all of the things which we picked up along the way, which were not part of our Islamic values, I'd like to remove those things. This is a very critical concept for us to understand. Because again, a lot, and often the times, the things that we incur and the problems are because of things which are not part of Islam. So if in Islam is this salvation, it is the solution for humanity, and please, I urge you not to think about Islam in a very narrow scope of being solution for Muslims, but understand its solution for all humanity. For the economic situations of the world, the poverty that exists in the world, the economic solutions of Islam remove poverty. The system of economics of zakat and khums and sadaqah, it removes from it. The system of inheritance, everything is designed to keep justice in society. Imam Ali alayhi salam said justice is that which is the centerpiece which the entire universe is built on. So if you remove that, then there will be chaos. The world will be in chaos. Now, in this messenger of Allah, we have this perfect exemplar. Going back to our sources of what the Quran has taught us is what will give us those values. Going back to what Imam Jawad alayhi salam had to experience, or what was experienced during this time. So when people were concerned about whether or not there would be an Imam and things like that, one of the issues was that when the Imam Rida alayhi salam was older, a little bit older. I mean, he was about almost 50 years old when Imam Jawad alayhi salam was born. And so, Imam Jawad alayhi salam also reaches his imamah at a very young age. At 7 or 8 years old, he's in this position of imamah. And again, this is not the imam of this group of people. This is the imam of humanity. And so what you can imagine that when the Muslimin, some of them, look, they said, this is our imam. Everybody else is a little older. If someone else who can be the imam, is this? And maybe this is part of the hikmah why Imam Rida alayhi salam only has this one son. So that there is not this issue. Before that, there were the Waqifis and the Ismailis. So there's a really difficult time for the Shias with all of this happening. Where the Waqifis were saying that no, that's the end of imamah. Where the Ismailis were going a different way. Now the people who want to be following and are anticipating the prophesied tall imams and know that there should be this imam and they've been mentioned by name beforehand and so on and so forth, they're in a state of concern. And one of the things which the teacher mentions and brings to light is that at that time, the values of Islam had gotten a little distant again from the source. I said because Allah had prepped them in different ways. Some of those are the mention of the, for example, cites the story of Prophet Zakaria. He had prepped them through Prophet Zakaria. Prophet Zakaria was a rabbi and a prophet, amongst other people who were clergy and rabbis. So they had many religious leaders. But Prophet Zakaria recognizes that maybe there's some flaws there, and in order for the book and following the book to be established, and following the way of Allah to be established, there needs to be someone after him. So he asked for a wali, for someone to be that vicegerent and that guardianship of the faith. He didn't ask specifically for a son, but he asked for a wali. That was his concern. And the response that Allah gives him is that, this is mentioned in ayat 5, 6, around there of Surah Maryam, where Allah says that we're going to give you this wali for a child whose name no one has had before. Prophet Yahya becomes that wali. And it says we're going to give him the book of the kitab, and it says for him to seize, to take the book bil-quwwah, and meaning with strength, and to hold firm to it while he is sabiyya, while he is but a young child. So this person is having this complete role and responsibility as a child. Prophet Yahya becomes the prophet who is going to be that spiritual guide and continue that path. If this was something that had become a concrete concept of understanding, for example, then at that time, during the era of Imam Jawad, then maybe there would not be so much of a problem or hesitancy or any issues. Imam mentioned that one of the Imam who was asked more questions than anyone else is Imam Jawad. Because people were constantly, well, we have to test it. Does he really know his stuff? And asking him questions in different ways to see if he truly had that level of divine knowledge to be considered the Imam of the people. And of course, he proved this time and time again. Getting distant from those true values, getting distant from the Quran, from those teachings, led Muslims to be in a place where they were even doubtful now about their ideology, and so then how do they practice? Because true practice is a reflection of your ideology. There is a time when there's just practice, though. There's a time when we just have practice, and it doesn't have any reflection of belief. What does that look like? This is not a type of taqwa, as Amir al-Mu'mineen has said. But what does that look like? It looks like the person who prays or fasts, but their prayer is mere movements. As Amir al-Mu'mineen says, some people during the month of Ramadan, they only experience hunger and thirst. There is nothing more to their fast. There's nothing spiritual about it. Who they do, why, their purpose, what they're trying to achieve. It's not just about being hungry and just being thirsty alone. There are goals for this movement. These goals have to reflect their belief. These have to go together. We have the people on the other side. We believe, so that's enough. God says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, amanu. Well, you who believe, believe. Really believe. To true belief. And so have people that are on the other end in terms of what they believe, that they believe in this prophet. But when it comes to practicing, their values are not there. So we'll have consequently some people that will say things like, as long as I have a good heart, I don't have to pray and fast. As long as my heart is good, that's enough. In the Quran, it says, إِن تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ اتَّبِعُونِ. The messenger spoke to tell these people, if you love Allah, you have to follow me. And my practice, not that kind of I love Allah, so then I'm going to do it my way. This is exactly the example of Iblis. What did he say? Ya Allah, after worshiping Allah for thousands of years, he says he's risen to a position that everyone in his tribe is destroyed, but he's saved. He becomes special. It says, Amir al-Mu'mineen says that we don't know if these are thousands of years of the heavens or the earth. These are heavenly years. Who knows how long this truly was? And he achieved to a place. But when Allah told him to do a certain particular action, he says, I have a better idea. Why don't we do something else? I can worship you in a way that you've never been worshipped before. Allah said, but I did not ask you. So his actions were a reflection of his ego, his nafs. He wanted that belief and action to look like something different at that moment. The values that he showed there were not reflective of the values of someone who's a believer. So he loses his rank and position. Why is this important? Because in the process of the things which connect all of humanity and that which connects all people, this example of our Prophet and the example of our Mawla Amir al-Mu'mineen, this is not achievable for us if our values become different. If our values begin to reflect ourselves and not our religion. This is the greatest challenge. The purpose of our existence is to reach a point where we perfect that. So consequently, there can be people, and Al-Kafi, one of our important hadith books, the first section is called the Book of Aql. It's about intellect. So there's an idea that this person who truly is intellectual in terms of understanding, knowledgeable about his religion, then it becomes a part of his belief and his practice. That these are combined and these are together. And they manifest in that. Now I wanted to talk about ukhuwah and brotherhood and unity, because I feel that Imam Ali alayhi salam is such a great representation of this. An incredible representation of this. There's ayat of Quran that mentions innama, where this word innama is used for being exclusive. And it refers to the mu'minun as being ikhwa, the believers. So there's only one possibility there, right? That if I'm in that group of believers, then I have to also be in that group of brothers. There's not two. This innama is signifying that this is a VIP exclusive section. That those who are mu'mineen, they have a brotherhood. But what does that really look like? There's one brother who did one of the ulama did a research about the aspects of brotherhood and mentioned five critical aspects of ukhuwah. Interesting enough, in the big picture of what community building looks like, the first stage is to reach ukhuwah, to reach brotherhood. After you reach ukhuwah, you go to the next stage, which is jama'ah. You reach this solidified congregation of mu'mineen. You're trying to get to that level of being a true ummah. And there's a couple of other stages as well. It's its own lengthy workshop, maybe for another time, inshallah. But this initial phase of ukhuwah, I remember one of our teachers saying that if we reach this stage in our lifetime, we will have achieved a lot. If we reach that stage, not that more than that is very unlikely in our lifetime. What is this all about? What does that mean? We started to begin to talk about some of these aspects of what ukhuwah is. And not necessarily that these have to be step by step. They can be happening sometimes simultaneously, depending on the situation. But at any rate, we'll mention these five. Please say salawat to Allah Muhammad wa
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad
So one of these is mudara. Mudara means to be amicable. It says salamat of the deen and the dunya is in mudara. The well-being of our religion, our deen, our dunya, our afterlife, and our life in this world is in mudara. What is mudara? Mudara is the act of just being amicable, tolerant, pleasant, kind. It's one of the absolute most basic levels of brotherhood. Parts of mudara involve things like forgiveness. One of the most sometimes you read those hadith that make the hairs on your body stand, make you really feel in a state of awareness or shock about the impact of what this can mean, the implication of it. One of those that comes to my mind is the one that talks about forgiveness. First of all, because no one is ma'asum outside of our ma'asumeen. None of us are sinless in that state outside of those group of our 14 ma'asumeen. Peace and blessings be upon them all. So this means that come Yawm al-Qiyamah, this day, which is 100%, again, Allah's promises are not like yours and mine. La yukhlifu al-mi'ad. His vow and promise is real. He does not go back, does not contradict. The paradise and hellfire are real. And so now Abba said that the beginning of the story where it talks about what's going to be happening, what's that going to look like, it's very intense. يوم يفر المرء من أخيه وأمه وأبيه وصاحبته وبنيه. The day when a man will run away from his brother. You think that maybe in this world your brother is the closest person to you. It says he'll be in such a state to be running away from him. And it's clearly in this world to be running away from them in that state on that day. وَالصَّاحِبَةِ وَبَنِيهِ. His spouse and children that he loves so dearly in this world, to be running away. It's an intense state of reality that this paradise and this hellfire is real on this day. So coming to those and understanding those realizations puts us in another place. So this hadith is Man la yarham la yurham. The one who does not show mercy does not receive mercy. On that day when the people are running and there's chaos and no one wants to even be around the people that they loved in this world so much because they're so worried about their own deeds and actions and what's going to happen. And so in that day you will need some forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it says there's no forgiveness for the person who did not have that mudara and who was not amicable enough to forgive his brother, his sister. So this is one of the big components of this mudara. I approach with amicableness, with tolerance. It's amazing! If you see how Muslims are, specifically in the world, model citizen. You see how Muslims are with their other Muslims? No comment. But if you ask the cashier, if you ask their neighbor, if you ask the church down the street, if you ask their non-Muslim people that know them, a model citizen, they have nothing but good things to say. But there's always complaints with them. Being amicable is that how we are outside in the world. How pleasant we are when dealing with others. That is what is necessary. The other aspect it says is mulaqa. The other aspect of brotherhood is mulaqa. After mudara is mulaqa. Mulaqa is the meeting of mu'mineen. It talks about, Imam Jawad has a hadith that talks about in this hadith from Imam Jawad, it talks about how the meeting of mu'mineen, this increases their aql. Talqihul aql, he uses, the impregnation of aql. That the intellect grows in a particular way, almost likened to the growing of a child in the womb of a woman. The intellect, the impregnation of the aql. It says the meaning of mu'mineen has this level of impact. And think about it. If you sit down with mu'mineen and other brothers and sisters who have the same care and love that you do, and they share with you things from themselves, from their life, from information, and they care, and they're sincere, this in and of itself is knowledge there that is unique. It's just part of the importance of Salat al-Jum'ah. I have to add a side note about Salat al-Jum'ah because I think that's a great example and manifestation of that mulaqa, of that meeting that happens where two people meet, where mu'mineen meet. Because number one, there's certain criteria. In Salat al-Jum'ah you can't have it but every so many miles. Right? So because there's a Salat al-Jum'ah here, then there can't be one, for example, for the next so many miles. Because of that, this means that more people in a wider vicinity have to come together if they want to make Salat al-Jum'ah. So this means that more people who may not be as close, bound by physical space, they're forced to come together because of this prayer. It happens once a week to make it an ease for people to be able to schedule that in. And a lot of other things, but one of the things that I want to point out specifically is in Surah Al-Jumu'ah, in Surah 62. It says, إِذَا نُودِيَ لِلصَّلَاةِ مِنْ يَوْمِ الْجُمْعَةِ. Now again, our value system being a reflection of Islam. Okay? And not of anything else. Everything else is secondary. إِذَا نُودِيَ لِلصَّلَاةِ مِنْ يَوْمِ الْجُمْعَةِ. If the call for Jumu'ah and Friday prayer is made, فَاسْعَوْا إِلَىٰ ذِكْرُ اللَّهِ وَذَرُوا الْبَيْعَ. Rush to the remembrance of Allah and leave your business and whatever your dealings are. ذَلِكُمْ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ إِن كُنتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. This is better for you if you only knew. Now, we're supposed to be reflecting on these values and what Allah is telling us, because the Quran is not unique to the time. It's one of the miraculous things that's relevant of all times, and we reflect on it. We look at the Muslim world. Usually Friday is a holiday in most Muslim lands. People are going to Jumu'ah, or Jumu'ah is something that's established, and people stop what they're doing, and they do go to work. Or businesses are already closed. So this message of فَاسْعَوْا إِلَىٰ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ without a bay is a specific message to everyone who lives in the Western world, where close of business on Friday is one of the most important times. Friday becomes one of the biggest and most important times for business. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling mu'mineen of today that there is something better for you. That mulaqah may be what's better for you. It says the midday prayer is a rizq. Ironically, it is your provision. The midday prayer, the Prophet said, this is your provision. That's the result of it. So if I miss my midday prayer because I need to try to make money somewhere elsewhere, I may be missing my rizq. Thinking, chasing my rizq, I may be missing my rizq. Because I made corporate values instead of Islamic values. Well, the next, I'll go to the other three. There's mudara, there's mulaqa, there is ziyara, which is the visitation in the homes of mu'mineen. This is one of the things that is recommended, that mu'mineen believers visit each other in their homes. There's a lot of hadith about these. I've went on a lot longer than I wanted to, but remember that was comfortable, I guess. And this ziyarah means that there's an effort made for visitation. And that this visitation, it mentions specifically in homes. There may be central meeting places like this. And there's another one that says majalis. Majalis is like majlis, those gatherings that they have for different events, where people come together for a bigger purpose and congregate and do things like at the center at the Masjid, or meet together for something else, for a workshop, or to go to do something together, maybe travel together. This is majalis. Ziyarah is talking about specifically in the homes. One of the hadith that mentions about ziyarah is a beautiful one. It says the person who does ziyarah, meaning the visitation of other mu'mineen in this world, on Yawm al-Qiyamah, they will be wearing a cloak min bayna qabatain min nur, that there will be like a cloak of light that they will be wearing. And everywhere that they will step will illuminate. Every step that they make will illuminate until they reach their Lord. And Allah will say, Marhaba. And Allah will welcome them. This is the person who did what? Ziyarah in this world. The other one was dirasa. Dirasa is that there has to be this component of getting educated. A component of learning. I always like to use this example to people. If you go somewhere and you see someone, and they're a child, and they're 5 years old. If you go out of town, you move, or you go somewhere, you spend some years, and then you come back, what do you expect to see after 5 years? Young man, young woman. Maybe they're wearing hijab, or they're dressed nicely, they're a little bit older, they have some good manners. That's what you would expect. Even if they don't have good manners, even if they're bad, you at least expect them to be a little taller, a little older. What if that's because the roof isn't blue? What if someone became stagnant in their spiritual growth? And they never learned more. They never practiced more. Don't think when Allah says in their hearts is a sickness, that's some people far off that are living in a terrible place only. No, in the heart of any person, this sickness can reside. That disease of the soul. What that may look like, anger, jealousy, other things. If a person, if you saw that went away for 5 years. Because they didn't develop spiritually. When you come back, it doesn't matter if they have aged in years, you're still spiritually an infant. See how people know? So they're still susceptible to the same anger, to the same ego, to the nafs. So Dirasa is this education process that we must continue. And Dirasa means as a community, classes, workshop, as an individual. I'm doing tabi'ah of my nafs every day until I leave this world. There's not an Islamic education, I did it and I moved on. Until you can say that you are perfect, then there is room for improvement. So we have to be good. Our Prophet is a perfect exemplar, means that he was the epitome of human perfection. Strive to do this. Strive to be like this. Amir al-Mu'mineen is not great for the purpose of revering him and to say, MashaAllah, he was great. No, he was a great example for me to follow. The last one says this ta'awun. Ta'awun means working together, cooperation. But there's just something unique about ta'awun. Ta'awun requires some sacrifice. Like, for example, if we decide that we're going to work together to build something or do something, so we may sacrifice financially to have that something. Or we may sacrifice, for example, in ta'awun, people may sacrifice to live in an area to all be close together, for example. Ta'awun requires some degree of sacrifice and that cooperation of working together, or building a business together, or doing things together. So all of these things, or these aspects, the research has shown that based on our ahadith, are the aspects which define ukhuwah and brotherhood. So there is much to achieve in terms of gaining and for us to reach to this level, inshallah. I hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us that tawfiq to be able to reach and to achieve that. I want to leave one last point. I read something very interesting. I read that IBM, which was popular before, before Microsoft and Apple and all of these, there was IBM. And the head of IBM at one time, many years ago, said, there may be a market in the world for 4 or maybe 5 computers. So, boy, was he wrong. Everybody's got a computer. Their phones, their laptops, tablets, everybody has multiple devices. Smartwatches, technology has changed a lot. But this reminded me of the importance of planning for the next generation, the importance of planning for the future. In any situation, no matter where we are, and even as mu'mineen, planning for our spiritual growth, planning for the future, what that will look like. No matter where we are, it is still important to think about what that future will look like practically and how can we get there. How can we build those aspects of ukhuwah? How can we make our masjid and our center the best example of ukhuwah? Remember, the place that holds true to the values will set the tone for everyone else. There's that group that went and they established, like I said, and they said, we'll fix our problems for us. We fix the problems of the world. Well, that part of it entails fixing ourselves. Obviously, pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us this tawfiq to see the right path and to stay on the right path. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps us to be those who follow the example of our Prophet and of Amir al-Mu'mineen and of all of the Ahlul Bayt. Pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala heals all of those who are in need of shafa, all of those who are ailing, all of those who are sick, that He brings faraj to all of the mustad'afeen all throughout the world, right here in America, in Yemen, in all of the Muslim world, where people are especially suffering. All of the Muslims who passed away in the recent shooting in New Zealand, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remember them in this holy month of Rajab. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to be those people who, in these months of Rajab, in the month of Sha'ban, and in the months leading up to Ramadan, that we are people who leave the month of Ramadan and each of its previous months as a different person, as a better person, and we only move forward in that progress, inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.